What if the last word of a dying civilization was carved in stone and no living soul could read it? Ugarit was a real city on the Syrian coast, home to roughly 25,000 people at its height, around 1200 BCE. Claude Scheffer began excavating it in 1929 and found a civilization so thoroughly erased that its name had been forgotten for 3,000 years. Ugaritic was a Semitic tongue, but written in an alphabetic cuneiform script found nowhere else. When Ugarit burned around 1185 BCE, that written form burned with it. Linguists reconstructed it only because excavators found bilingual administrative texts on site. Without those texts, the script would be as sealed as linear A. When Scheffer's team reached Ugarit's administrative quarter in 1929, they found walls and storage rooms still bearing legible inscriptions. The site had been sealed beneath a mound called Ras Shamra for over 3,000 years. The ash that destroyed the city had also preserved it. Languages don't merely name things. They encode how a culture carves up reality. Sumerian, one of the oldest written languages on record, used a system called determinatives, silent classifying signs placed before nouns to mark whether a word referred to a person, a deity, a wooden object, or a city. One invisible prefix, four entirely different ontological categories. Take the Sumerian determinative dinger, a silent sign placed before a word to mark it as divine. The same spoken syllable, written with or without that prefix, meant either a god or an ordinary noun. Thorkild Jacobsen spent decades mapping these invisible grammatical layers in texts recovered from Nippur and Ur. This isn't ancient history alone. Basque, spoken today by around 700,000 people in northern Spain and southern France, encodes the gender and social status of your listener directly inside the verb itself, a feature called allocutivity. Indo-European languages can't replicate it without adding entire extra clauses. In 1974, Paolo Mathieu and Alfonso Archi excavated Tel Mardik in northern Syria, the ancient city of Ebla, and found approximately 17,000 cuneiform clay tablets stacked in the ruins of the Royal Palace Archive. The palace had burned around 2300 BCE. The fire baked the tablets hard and preserved them. The Ebla archive included bilingual Sumerian Eblite lexical lists, vocabulary glossaries pairing each known Sumerian word with its Eblite equivalent. Without those lists, Eblite would have been impenetrable. With them, linguists could map a Semitic language that had been completely unknown to scholarship the day before the dig. The Rosetta Stone, found in Egypt in 1799, cracked an entire dead writing system because it carried the same decree in 3 scripts. The Ebla bilingual lists served the same function for Eblite, but Linear A, the undeciphered script of Minoan Crete, has never yielded such a key. Arthur Evans discovered it in 1900. Alice Kober, an American classicist working in the 1940s, spent years attacking Linear B, the related but distinct Mycenaean Greek script, before Michael Ventris deciphered it in 1952. Her surviving index cards, held at the University of Texas, show thousands of crossed-out pattern attempts. She'd mapped noun cases before a single verb yielded its pattern. Ventris's breakthrough came not from a bilingual text, but from noticing that certain sign clusters appeared only at the beginning of tablet entries, never in the middle, never at the end. Position in the sequence was doing grammatical work. The archive's own organization had been encoding structure all along. In Linear B, administrative categories, livestock, grain, personnel, were signaled by where a sign cluster sat on the tablet, not just which signs appeared. Position was a grammatical marker. Ventris published his decipherment in the Journal of Hellenic Studies in 1953, and Aegean linguistics has never recovered its former assumptions. This pattern surfaces in living languages too. Japanese encodes social hierarchy directly into verb conjugation. The same action described differently depending on whether you rank above or below the person you're addressing. But Yildari went further. It made hierarchy inseparable from syntax itself. Every Yildari home bore a threshold inscription unique to that family lineage. Not a name, a declaration of relational position, who you were to your neighbors, your city, your dead. The threshold was a grammatical statement about belonging. When Yildar burned, the thresholds didn't vanish. The stone survived, but the people who could read them, who understood what it meant to stand beneath that particular declaration, were gone. The echo remained. The ear had been silenced. Here is the real-world weight of this. The Endangered Languages Project estimates that one language dies roughly every 2 weeks. Each death takes with it a distinct cognitive framework, a way of organizing reality that existed nowhere else on Earth. Elamite, spoken in ancient Persia for over 2,000 years and last attested around 400 BCE, contains terms that remain semantically opaque despite decades of scholarship. The word Rishatena, documented in the Persepolis fortification tablets and studied by Matthew Stolper at the Oriental Institute, appears in contexts suggesting an emotional or ritual state, but no precise equivalent has been confirmed in any other language. Some languages carry words for experiences that others can't name. The German Schadenfreude, the Portuguese Saudade. When those languages die, those precise emotional categories become harder for humanity to think. Not impossible, but harder. Stolper's published notes on Rishatena run across multiple papers spanning the 1980s and 1990s. His working definitions shifted between a state of ritual obligation, a form of sanctioned grief, and a category of permitted mourning. None fully satisfied the contextual evidence. The concept existed. The word survived. The meaning stayed just out of reach. Ugarit didn't fall in a single catastrophic siege. Archaeological evidence points to sustained stress, drought, disrupted trade routes, then a final violent destruction around 1185 BCE, likely tied to the broader Bronze Age collapse. Letters found in the Royal Archive, never sent, describe enemy ships already visible offshore. The language outlasted the city by perhaps a generation in surrounding settlements. The last confirmed Ugaritic texts date to approximately 1185 BCE. Among them is a letter found in a kiln where it was being fired for delivery. From the king of Ugarit to the king of Alashia, modern Cyprus, describing an attack already underway. It was never sent. It's the closest thing to a final word that Ugaritic left behind. Scholars at the Louvre, where the tablet is now held, translate its closing lines as something close to, "If there are enemy ships, let me know immediately so that I can act." The king was asking for a warning that had already arrived too late. The city burned before the letter reached anyone it was meant to find. Remember, the Sumerian determinative dinger, the silent mark that transformed an ordinary word into a divine one. That invisible grammatical layer, which once organized an entire civilization's relationship to the sacred, is understood today only because enough bilingual texts survived. For Linear A, no such mark has ever been decoded. The silence is total. Linguists working on endangered languages race against exactly this kind of silence. The Endangered Languages Project, launched in 2012, has documented over 3,000 languages. But documentation isn't preservation. It's a recording of an echo. The voice and the knowledge it carried are not the same thing. The difference between documentation and revitalization is the difference between a museum and a home. Hebrew was revived as a living spoken language by the late 19th century, a genuine resurrection, not an archive. Yildari had no such advocates, no classroom, no chalkboard, no children learning its threshold declarations by rote. The Ugaritic reconstruction effort, carried out over roughly 60 years by Cyrus Gordon and John Hunegard among others, produced a working grammar and a dictionary of approximately 2,000 root terms. That sounds substantial, until you consider that a functional adult vocabulary in any living language runs to 50,000 words or more. 2,000 roots is a skeleton, not a body. Gordon's published Ugaritic textbook, first issued in 1940 and revised through the 1960s, contains explicit notations where a grammatical category is known to exist, but no example survives in the recovered tablets. The gaps are marked. They are not small. For Proto-Elamite, a script with over 5,000 surviving tablets and still entirely undeciphered, the blank pages are the entire book. Ugarit isn't unique. The Indus Valley Civilization, which peaked around 2500 BCE and encompassed Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, with a combined population estimated at 5 million, left behind a script that has never been deciphered. No bilingual text has ever been found. No Rosetta Stone exists for it. The cognitive world of 5 million people remains completely sealed. In 2008, linguist K. David Harrison published When Languages Die, documenting the last speakers of dozens of endangered languages. One chapter describes Boa-Ciar, the last speaker of Bo, a language of the Andaman Islands with a history stretching back 65,000 years. She died in 2010. Researchers had recorded her voice, but a recording and an understanding are not the same thing. Here's something you can do before this video ends. The Endangered Languages Project at endangeredlanguages.com accepts public contributions, recordings, transcriptions, community knowledge for over 3,000 documented languages. Lyle Campbell and the University of Hawaii coordinates field documentation efforts that have already produced grammars for languages with fewer than 10 living speakers. The archive is open. The work is ongoing. The last Ugaritic letter was fired in a kiln and never delivered. It survived 3,000 years because someone preserved the conditions for its survival, without knowing that was what they were doing. Every language documented today is a tablet that might still be readable in 3,000 years. Visit endangeredlanguages.com. The threshold is still open.